Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode. I'm Michelle,
I'm Joy.
and today we'll be talking about victim blaming. So, most of you probably already know what victim blaming is, but for the people who are not familiar with it, victim blaming is a social phenomenon where the victim of a crime, abuse, or injustice is held partially or wholly responsible for the harm they have experienced. Instead of placing the blame on the perpetrator or the system that allowed the harm to occur, the focus is shifted onto the victim's behavior, choices, appearance, or character. This blaming attitude often overlooks the action of the offender and downplays their responsibility, leading to the unjust treatment of the victim.
Yeah, and it's wrong because victim blaming attitudes can discourage victims from reporting incidents, seeking help, or sharing their experiences with others due to fear of judgment or ridicule. And by placing the blame on the victim, society may unintentionally absolve the perpetrator of their wrongful actions, enabling them to continue their harmful behavior. And victim blaming attitudes can influence legal proceedings, social support systems, and public opinions, making it difficult for victims to receive the help and justice they deserve. Victim blaming can happen in serious situations that lead to jail time or small little disputes that occur in everyone's day to day interactions. It can also include, but is not limited to, cases of cyberbullying or discrimination, among others.
Yeah, and for sexual assault and rape, women are usually blamed for what they wear, whereas for men, it's toxic masculinity, blaming men because of the belief that men should always be in charge and downplaying their experience because they're a man. For domestic violence cases, victims are usually blamed for provoking the abuser. Victim blaming can be extremely damaging on the victim because when victims are blamed for the harm they endured, it worsens their feelings of shame, guilt, and self doubt. They may also internalize the blame and believing they are somehow responsible for what happened to them, leading to a damaged sense of self worth and self esteem. Victims may also experience a sense of betrayal and abandonment from those they had hoped would support them. Their lack of validation and understanding can further isolate them, hindering their ability to heal and seek help. These emotional burdens may manifest as anxiety, depression, PTSD, and other mental health challenges, making the road to recovery even more challenging.
Yeah, and basically, it can make survivors feel guilty and ashamed of what happened to them, even though they weren't responsible for the actions of the perpetrator. And it can also cause them to withdraw from social circles and support networks. Now, it's also important to understand the causes of victim blaming or factors that can lead to it. Victim blaming can arise from various psychological and societal factors. When people are confronted with a situation where a victim has suffered harm, it can create cognitive dissonance. To reduce this discomfort, individuals may resort to victim blaming as a way to rationalize or justify the harm done to the victims. Societal norms and cultural beliefs play a significant role in shaping attitudes towards victim blaming as well. In some cultures, victim blaming attitudes may be reinforced by traditional gender roles, victimization myths, or the belief that certain groups of people are more prone to victimization. These beliefs can perpetuate victim blaming attitudes within a community.
So, for sexual assault cases, one root cause of victim blaming is the misconceptions about consent. Some people still hold the belief that victims must have done something to deserve the assault, such as dressing provocatively or consuming too much alcohol. These attitudes stem from deeply ingrained cultural norms that places the blame on victims rather than holding perpetrators accountable. For domestic violence cases, victim blaming may arise from societal expectations around gender roles and relationships. Some people still stick to the traditional idea of male dominance and female submission. Another one is assuming that victims should stand up for themselves or just leave abusive relationships without considering the complexities of such situations. We haven't talked about this before, but for racial discrimination cases, the root causes are often connected with systemic racism and stereotypes. People from marginalized communities may face blame for their own oppression due to prejudiced beliefs that certain groups are inferior or responsible for their circumstances. Just in general, victim blaming may be due to someone's own beliefs, like when someone blamed the victim to justify their own beliefs, or when someone blames the victim to justify their family or friends' actions, even if they know it's wrong. Or it might be just due to lack of empathy. So you might wonder, just how serious can victim blaming affect someone? Well, one case regarding how victim blaming can affect someone that was pretty popular a few years ago is the case of Amanda Todd. Amanda Todd was a Canadian teenager who became the victim of cyberbullying and online exploitation. A little bit of a background. Amanda Todd was a 15-year-old girl who lived in British Columbia, Canada. In 2012, she shared her story through a YouTube video that quickly went viral and got over 15 million views. The video used a series of flashcards to narrate her experience. It all started when Amanda was in the 7th grade, and she was encouraged by a stranger online to expose herself via webcam. Without her knowing, the stranger captured inappropriate images of her and used them to blackmail and harass her relentlessly. The torment escalated when the images were circulated among her peers and classmates. She faced extreme cyberbullying, which included hurtful messages, insults, and even threats of physical violence. Amanda's mental health took a severe toll as she battled depression, anxiety, and feelings of hopelessness. In addition to the support she received, Amanda also faced victim blaming responses from some individuals and online communities. Some blamed her for taking the original photos, while others suggested that she was seeking attention or that she deserved the consequences of her actions. Throughout her struggles, Amanda did have some friends who supported her. However, she also faced instances where her trust was betrayed and some individuals who claimed to be her friends turned against her, adding to her feelings of isolation and despair. Amanda did reach out to law enforcement and school authorities for help. However, the response she received was not sufficient to address the severity of the situation, leaving her feeling unsupported and unheard. The victim blaming attitude and the help she was unable to receive from the law and school authorities added to Amanda's feelings of isolation and despair. She struggled to find a supportive environment to heal and recover from the trauma she experienced. Despite reaching out for help and support, Amanda Todd tragically took her own life on October 10, 2012. Her story became a heart-wrenching example of how cyberbullying, exploitation, and victim blaming can have devastating consequences on a person's mental health and well-being. Amanda's story sparked outrage and a global conversation about cyberbullying, online exploitation, and victim blaming. It shed light on the importance of creating safe spaces for victims to come forward without fear of judgment or blame. Although her death was not fully due to victim blaming, I believe it definitely played a huge role. And to think that the pictures weren't even leaked by her, but there were still people saying that she did it for attention and others just criticizing and blaming her without showing an ounce of empathy is just so heartbreaking. Her case led to increased awareness about the impact of victim blaming and the need for empathy and support for those who experience such traumas. But even with the increased awareness about the impact of victim blaming, I feel like it's still a widespread issue that a lot of people are dealing with.
Yeah, I agree. Because shortly after, a year later, in 2013, Ohio Steubenville, another case occurred. So basically, what went down was two high school football players were accused of raping a 16-year-old girl during a party, while multiple accomplices recorded the assault. Although these two boys were found guilty, the media mostly supported them rather than the girl, saying that it was her fault she was drunk in the first place. This case is so infuriating to me since it not only shows that victim blaming can come from others rather than the perpetrator, but it also demonstrates how little sympathy people can have on others. I believe that if it were to happen to a loved one, everyone would be infuriated and would most likely focus the blame on the two boys. And I can't even begin to imagine what the girl must have felt having the whole media against her.
Yeah, I can't imagine either. And to think she's like our age experiencing this level of victim blaming when she should have instead have been receiving support from people is truly heartbreaking. However, it is important to note that victim blaming doesn't just apply to sexual assault and rape victims and domestic violence victims, though it might affect the victims of those cases more, but it can also apply to our day to day life. I'm sure everyone, including you and me, have experienced some sort of victim blaming at least once in our life, even if it's not regarding such serious issues. What experiences do you have with victim blaming?
A personal experience that I've had with victim blaming and is basically, I just want to say, like, disclaimer, I'm not really a victim in this story. It's just a form of victim blaming. And basically what happened was, in my freshman year of high school, I I got really unlucky, and I got like this really hard bio honors teacher. And he would be like 10 times harder than even AP bio teachers. He would teach us stuff, and then we would take the test, and it would be completely different from what we've been taught. And so basically, I just told my mom about this. I was complaining, and I was like complaining about how my bio grade isn't high, and how most people in our class had a very low bio grade because of this teacher. And my mom basically just said that it's because we don't study as much. Like, it's our fault that we got this grade. And this might be partially true, but I told her, I like constantly told her about how our bio teacher is unfair, and he even got kicked out of AP Bio at one point because his tests were just too hard. And my mom still insisted that it was my fault that my grade is so low. And this is just like a little tiny form of victim blaming. And victim blaming can come in so many different ways, and this is just one of them. And this kind of really shows how victim blaming can occur everywhere at any time with anybody. Like in this situation, I was just ranting to my mom about like this teacher that I have, and she goes on and she basically victim blames me and says that it's my fault, and when in fact it was most likely the teacher's fault, and because like every other student was also experiencing this. So yeah.
I definitely agree with the fact that victim blaming can occur at anywhere, anytime, and from anyone. I was also victim blamed by my mom too when I was like 8 years old. As said before, victim blaming doesn't only occur to serious issues, and for my case, it really isn't that serious now that I look back at it. But to like 8-year-old me, I was like heartbroken and my world collapsed. So basically, I used to be in this like summer school program, and on the last day of school, we went on a field trip, and the instructors told us what to bring, including money in a plastic baggie for the gift shops and stuff. So on the day of the field trip, I had fun with my friends, and at the end of the day, we decided to go to the gift shop to buy toys and stuff, and that was when I realized my $20 were gone. And to 8-year-old me, $20 was a lot of money. Like, it still is right now, but like now I have like more money, so losing $20 wouldn't be too bad. But at the time, $20 was all I had. My friend ended up paying for me, and when we got back to our summer school place to get picked up, this girl told me that she saw this dude steal it. I was, and for good reason, extremely mad at the dude, and when I got home, I was in tears ranting to my mom about it. However, instead of being mad at the dude with me or comforting me, she told me I should have never put my money in a clear plastic bag for other people to see and basically blamed me for losing the money. I used to think, well, I still think that I had no faults in the situation because I only put my money in the plastic bag because the instructors said to do so. And I don't even think the clear plastic bag was the issue. It probably would have still been stolen had it been in a non see through wallet. And I also never internalized the blame because I blamed the thief then and I still do now. But even so, I feel like I would have been less salty about the situation if my mom had been on my side instead of criticizing me in a situation I had no control over. However, it is also important to note that not only have we all been a victim of victim blaming, but we all probably victim blame someone else ourselves. It is an unfortunate reality that many people have at some point in their lives engaged in victim blaming behavior, even if unintentionally, whether we said it out loud, texted it, commented it, or even thought it. Victim blaming is deeply ingrained in societal attitudes and can emerge in various situations, both big and small. So, some strategies for you to recognize and challenge victim blaming attitudes in yourself and others is to have empathy and put yourself in the victim's shoes. Don't jump to conclusions and be sure to gather all the facts and understand the full context of a situation before making judgments or assigning blame. Keep mean words to yourself because you can't take back words and you just never know. And basically, just if you don't have anything to say, don't say it at all. And in general, just be nice.